everybody. We are so glad that you could join us, and here's hoping that you enjoyed the first part of this journey that we are embarking on, this journey with grief. Once again, I have my good friend, Connie, with us. How are you, Connie?
Greetings, Pastor Lil. Good day to everyone. I'm well, Pastor Lil. Thank you. And how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. It was amazing, your story the last time. What an amazing story.
Thank you, Pastor Lil. And I'm sure that yours is amazing as well. And today we get a snippet of it, right?
Yes, I'm going to endeavor to tell you a very long story in a very short space of time because there's so much of amazing details. And
Yes, a lot.
time would not permit me, but let me cut to the chase and let
Yep.
me tell you. So, I was not looking for a boyfriend for the simple reason that, I came from a staunch Hindu home, but I was not Hindu in a Hindu home, right? I was Christian in a Hindu home, and my dad would not permit me to date anyone, have any relationships with anyone, or anything of that matter. So I was not looking. Long story short, my mum got me all dressed up one day and took me to a wedding. And at the wedding, we met my mum's friend who thought that, my mum's got a daughter who was big enough to be married, and she came to that conclusion all by herself. and and she said, hey, and she started to be Cupid and said, let me be a matchmaker. And a few days down the line, my mum comes to me and says, Lil, guess what? My friend who saw you at the wedding thinks you are very nice, and she has a brother for you.
Wow.
And Connie, I was very irritated at the time because with our Indian parents, the moment, you can eat your food by yourself and dress up and comb your hair by yourself, they think
Yes.
it's now time to get married.
Yes.
And we are not. I wanted to study, I wanted to have a career, I wanted to do all of these wonderful things.
Yes.
But my dad and my mum, just like God, they knew the plans they had for me. It was definitely not my plan. But hey, lo and behold, long story short, I was introduced to my husband. He came to my house one day and I saw him for the first time in my living room.
Wow.
It was not so romantic.
Oh, shame.
Gosh, there was no lovely music, and he saw me across the room, and wow, who is this guy that I can't get my eyes off? Nothing of that sort. I was introduced to him. When he looked at me, I heard much later what he actually said and did on the day that he saw me for the first time. When he left me, he went to the car and he says, Mum, I'm going to marry that girl.
Wow.
And that was day one for him. So for him, it was love at first sight. And he decided to take the liberty to come visit me over and over and over again. And I wanted nothing to do with him.
Such a brave guy.
He wasn't bad to look at, eh? He was actually handsome.
I was waiting for that, Pastor Lil. That was what I was waiting for. Yes.
I don't know why. It wasn't love at first sight for me or anything. He wasn't bad to look at. Actually, he was quite good looking. And that for me was a deterrent.
Okay.
You know why? Because he came from Chatsworth and he came from a place that I was not living in. So how do I keep an eye on him?
Oh,
How do I
wow.
keep tabs? How do I know this tall, was not dark, but tall and handsome guy, how do I know he doesn't have a girlfriend? He just won number 2 in Phoenix, where the Chatsworth one won't know about.
So you thought he was going to play you, Pastor Lil?
Yeah, I promise you, I've heard stories, I've seen stuff, I've seen people have broken hearts. I've seen a lot in my time, in my long life of 19 years.
Let's get to the juicy bits, Pastor Lil. I'm sure our listeners want to get to that part.
Yeah. So he said, he came for 2.5 months, and I said, I want nothing to do with him. But there was a day when he said, I know I'm wasting my time, but I somehow feel that God has connected us. And I said, he's putting God into it so that I have to pay attention. But something was happening inside of me because it was my prayer that God must lead me to the guy that he wants me to be married to. Because I, at the age of 19, was very, very much um, what's the word I'm using? I was already madly in love with Jesus,
Wow. Wow. And you needed someone
just like him.
just like him.
I
Wow.
wanted someone to love him
Mm-hmm.
more than they'll ever love me and all of that. And I automatically assumed with this guy, the way he looks, he drives a nice car, he plays nice 80s romantic music, he can't be
Mm.
from God.
Yes.
He can't be
Yes.
from God. But was I pleasantly surprised? He ticked all the boxes physically, in his charm, and the way he carried himself. My dad absolutely loved him. It was a shocker for me. It was a shocker because my dad did not like Christianity. He was a Hindu.
Mm.
But yet, he actually liked a Christian guy.
Wow.
And he did say to my mum, if Lily wants to marry him, it's okay, she can. And I said, wow, am I the lucky one now? My dad is actually approving for me to get married. Long story short, I met him on the 31st of January, 1987. In October the same year, I mean, talk about wise
Whirlwind.
man says, only fools rush in.
But I can't help falling in love.
So he said he can't help. He was already hook, line, and sinker, madly in love with me. And we got engaged in October 1987. 1 year later, we got married October 1988.
Whirlwind romance, Pastor Lil.
Yeah, I was swept off at my feet. Um, Connie, but I'd like to tell you that it lasted and it was going to be forever and ever and ever. But Connie, unfortunately, and I know you have the same story, death did us part. So, what was your death did you part story? Tell us about it. I get heavy when I talk about this part.
Yeah, so Pastor Lil, we went about our lives as normal, involved in ministry, picking and dropping kids and counseling people, preaching the word, taking the word to the streets. And in the midst of all this, in 2020, I think latter part of 2019, COVID started. And it started overseas in Wuhan, if I remember correctly. And I was planning my daughter's 16th birthday party. And we wanted to take a trip overseas. And it so happened that we couldn't because travel started to become restricted. And so December came and went, and we had a huge bash for Christmas, as we always do. And then January came and the new year. And then things started heating up because people had went on overseas holiday. And guess what happened? COVID started spreading. So I was on a flight back from Cape Town on a plane with Italians. And I got back home and I got a phone call to say, you need to go into isolation. And this was in March. And so we had a big scare because somebody that I worked with could have been positive. And, we then found out about COVID. The country went on lockdown. And so everything started to unravel, immensely fast. Things started moving fast with COVID. Um, my happily ever after came to a standstill in August 2021. The family had contracted COVID.
I remember you telling me a while back that when Pastor Glenn, my husband, was on the ventilator, Ashina said to you that you need to pray.
Yes.
Pray for a pastor in our church that's very sick. But little did you realize, hey?
That it was
Little-
going to be.
Yeah, little did you realize you're going to need all that prayer.
Yes.
Somebody's going to have to pray for you.
It was, Ron was on his 10th day of recovery. So,
On a ventilator.
Ron wasn't on a ventilator. We were all at home.
Oh, okay.
We were all at home and we all had COVID and we were like one behind the other in terms of the days of infection, right?
Okay,
So,
okay.
at that time they gave you 10 days and Kyle had just finished his 10 days. He was on his 12th day. My daughter was on her 9th day. Ron was on his 10th, and I think I was like on my 13th day. So I was over, in terms of the infection. And Pastor Lil, on his 10th day, Ash had come home after Glenn, saying goodbye to Glenn. And Ron got very sick. And so she's
So Ash came after the funeral to
after
see
the
you.
funeral, she came to see me. And we were sitting outside and talking because Ron was sick and we wanted fresh air. And we were sitting outside and we were just talking. And she said, Con, please check Ron's oxygen levels. It was something that we didn't really, consider checking at that time because it was on his 10th day and he was fine. And Pastor Lou, we checked his levels and it was in its 60s, which was critical and you needed to rush him off to hospital.
Yo.
But he had a CPAP machine at home, which we plugged in. We called the ambulance over and they said, no, just plug the machine on and he will be fine. And that's what we did. But he took a turn for the worse. And that evening, that night, he got very sick. And I remember something so strange happening. He didn't want to go to the hospital, but he sat in the lounge and I sat next to him and he said, Connie, please pray for me. So I held on to him and I prayed with him. And the only thing I remember him doing constantly was checking the clock on the wall. So he knew time was running out and time was up, but I didn't know.
So he was a pastor, right?
Yes.
So do you somehow feel that maybe God was preparing him and God was telling him, it's time you're coming home? It was something that he didn't want to actually make you guys see. But how do you feel about that time? Was he pressing and holding on, or was he just like giving up?
So Ron was still awake and conscious.
Yeah.
However,
Because like if you guys went and visited him, he was talking.
so from home, when he got sick at home that evening, he was awake. When the ambulance came and took him to the hospital, he was awake. We spoke to him, but he just was too weak. He couldn't walk. So we had to get him onto the stretcher, into the ambulance, and then take him to hospital. But I could see in his eyes that there was something not right.
Something amiss, yeah. Yeah, that look.
That look on his face was not the Ron that I know, that confident pastor, father, husband. There was something there that I didn't quite identify with. So he got to hospital, Mount Edgecombe, and they told us if he's going to be admitted, they'll let us know. I sat in the car from 5 o'clock that morning till 8 o'clock that morning, waiting to hear what's going on. And all around me was chaos because ambulance was coming in and out of the hospital. Patients were running out, screaming and crying, running in, screaming and crying. It was awful. There was a tent outside the hospital.
That's that
The memory, Pastor Lil,
part of
just
COVID. Hey,
gives me the shivers.
gosh.
And so Ron was admitted. The last picture he sent me, I have of him in hospital, and he says, doctor says that I have double pneumonia, but I'm fine and I'll be coming home soon.
And was he WhatsApping you, or was
He
it
was
a video call?
WhatsApping me. He
Okay.
didn't want to video call me.
So how many days were you separated from him?
We were separated for 3 weeks.
You haven't seen him for 3 weeks.
So we couldn't enter into the hospital because it was COVID. However, Ron had a bed. We had arranged for a bed to be near the window.
Oh my, no, that
So
helps.
my daughter was doing her June exams, matric June exams, and preparing for trials. So I would drive to the bluff.
Hold on. Hold it right there. Did your daughter have to go through matric grieving her dad?
Yes.
Connie, that must have been excruciatingly painful for her. How did she cope with that?
Sorry, Pastor. Gets a bit emotional. So as I said, Erin was in the midst of her trials. And I would drive her to the bluff and come back, stop at Mount Edgecombe Hospital, look at Ron through the window for 4 or 5 seconds, wave at him, stand outside his window, lift my hands up to the heavens, call unto this God that I know, and pray, leave,
Oh, Connie.
go home, fasted and prayed for those 3 weeks, go back, fetch Erin, come back, stop so that he could see her and she could see him, wave, go back home. It was repeat for 3 weeks, up and down. The guards knew me, the people that visited family there that were allowed to visit family knew me. And people that came to visit their family at that time, Pastor, was coming to say their final goodbyes.
Oh,
And I didn't even know that at that time. So Ron was in hospital for 3 weeks. And the day that I got the phone call, he was totally fine.
so Connie, I need to ask. You've got a son and a daughter.
Yes.
How did your son deal with this? Because for some reason, when I get to my story, I will tell you more. The sons do not actually, they don't show you. They don't
Totally.
wear their heart on their sleeve, right? They don't show you. They feel like they need to be, I don't know in your case, but they feel like they need to be strong for you.
Exactly.
And they just put everything, they hide it, they lock it away.
Yes. Totally correct. 100% correct, Pastor Lil. My son Kyle overnight grew up. He became the man of the house overnight. I look back on the chats that he and his dad had.
It's so sad.
I look at the chats, Pastor Lil, and it breaks me.
Oh,
His dad told him the night before he passed, son, you are now the man of the house.
what? And I just said to you, he knew he was going. Gosh, he knew he was in touch with God. And this is, can I pause for a moment there? There are people that's going through grief without God. How do they do it? Because we see through the pattern, through the things that we've gone through, that God was there from the beginning. God was speaking. He was standing there. He was holding our hands. He was walking with us. He was lying down next to us. He was he was sitting at a table where we would dish the food, and the dad is not there.
Yes,
And what about when we cook something that they would love?
totally, Pastor Lil.
It was excruciatingly, to say the least. It was
I-
excruciating.
I never put my stove on for 8 months. I could not walk into the kitchen and cook.
Oh, you too. You too.
I couldn't.
Oh, man.
I couldn't cook a meal because just walking into that kitchen was devastatingly crushing. Every moment alone in that house was devastatingly crushing. I literally had to pick myself up from the kitchen floor far too many times. Far too many times.
I don't know who's watching us today, but I just hope that whoever's listening will understand that they're not alone in this. They will understand that they've been through this, others have been through it, and this is the real aim of what we're trying to do here, right? And trying to show people that many others have gone through this excruciating time of pain and total, I don't know how you would describe it, but this is how I would describe it. A sword piercing my soul. So it goes beyond the flesh. Do you feel that?
That pain of that sword piercing your heart, I think no human word possible will be able to describe that pain, Pastor Lil. My heart shattered into a million pieces. Not just the piercing, but the shattering. I felt every piece just break off.
It somehow reminds me of Gethsemane. I think that story and the gravity of it, the grave details that the author is trying to communicate to the people when we read Jesus at Gethsemane. And the droplets, the perspiration became droplets of blood because something broke
Yes.
inside him. The anguish of the cross, the anguish of going through this excruciating pain caused that. And I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I promise you I could identify with Gethsemane. I
And
could
that pain.
identify, and that was your Gethsemane moment, right? Tell me a little more about it. Tell me, make me understand your Gethsemane moment where you felt that you was bleeding on the outside. You were so cut on the inside that you felt the blood oozed out of your pores. Did it feel like that?
I had, in one word, Pastor Lil, I wanted to die.
Mm.
I think that's the best word that I could use.
And in all this time, you also had COVID. You still had the disease?
I still had COVID complications.
Mm.
I was still working, Pastor Lil.
Mm.
I was still transporting my daughter back and forth from Phoenix to the Bluff to get to school. I was still sitting with the church and encouraging them, praying for others, giving counseling to others, all the while having a broken spirit and a broken heart. It was almost as if I was having this outer body experience,
Mm.
watching myself go on daily, but not living, dead.
I can so identify, and I'm sure the viewers, some of the viewers out there, they're going to tell us about it in comments and things, but I can only imagine. I'm sure there's so many people that identify with the story. And then,
Pastor Lil, I was chatting to Ron at night. So when everybody was asleep, he would WhatsApp me because he couldn't sleep.
Mm.
And we would chat. And we would talk about so many things, about the plans that he had when he came out, about our future together, how he was going to do things differently, how things were going to change for us.
so he was holding on and holding on and holding on to the hope of coming out.
And that was my encouragement to him every day. Pastor Lil, I had a prayer plan for Ron.
Ah.
And I've got the chart with me still.
You know, this is what we're trying to communicate to people out there. You know, we know God. That's why I say it's raw and it's real.
Yes.
Because we know God. We
Yes.
know His Word. We listen to His Word and all of this. But Jesus did not say, He did not say we won't have trouble.
Agreed.
Because what does John 16:33 tells us? In this world we will have trouble.
Amen.
But He says, be encouraged.
Yes.
I have
Overcome
overcome the
world.
world.
Amen.
Yeah, so go on.
So I had a
Please.
prayer plan,
Mm.
and I think, in my 38th or 36th day of fasting and praying,
Mm.
because I started fasting and praying not just for our family with COVID, but for so many other people that were going through so much. And I had this prayer plan all worked out, 4-point prayer plan on what we were going to pray for. Every day we would have communion, break bread, online. People would come. Ash would come home and pray with us. So it was a constant thing, and I would give Ron hope every single night. When he was about to give up, I would say, you can do this. God's got you. I would encourage him. I would send him a good morning message, send him a song, send him a scripture of encouragement.
Do you at any point felt that I need to tell this to Ron because I need to remind myself? I need to keep telling him he's going to be okay because I need to know he's going to be okay. I need to know this for sure. So let me tell him so that I can convince myself more than I want to convince him. Did you ever feel that?
So it never got to that point. I remember somebody coming to me and telling me that the faith that they saw in me for that 2 months, they could have brought a dead person and laid it at my feet, and I would have prayed that person back to life. So that's the amount of faith and strength and courage God gave me. I was living on communion. For 2 months, I was living on communion, nothing
Wow.
else.
Wow.
So it was the broken body, the shed blood, and the
Hallelujah.
resurrection power of Christ
Hallelujah.
that carried me from that day, Pastor Lil, and now it's 2.5 years later. That same power that was with me then is carrying me to this day. When I had to go into that
Amazing.
hospital, when I got the call, don't ask me how I drove from Woodview to Mount Edgecombe Hospital because I was crying uncontrollably. I got to Phoenix Tech Robots.
Now, did they call you to say he's on his last lap? Or did they say he's already gone to be with the Lord?
So the funny thing is, Pastor Lil, I spoke to my husband's doctor at 5 o'clock that morning, and he told me Ronnie's doing exceptionally well.
What date was this?
This was on the 27th of August.
Okay.
He said, Ronnie's doing exceptionally well. We want you to come and see him just to encourage him because he needs to see you. It's been a long time. So I said, okay, doc, what time should I get there? He said, we'll call you and make the arrangements for you to come through. And so, Pastor Lil, I was preparing to go and see Ron. I said, I'm going. It's like, the bride preparing to meet her groom. And I said, Lord, when I walk into that ICU.
You must look so smart. You must say, I'm coming home to you.
Exactly. And I was like, he needs to know that what he's coming back home to.
Yeah.
And I said, I
True
also
story.
want to walk in just like our Esther walked into the palace. And I said, Lord, I want that favor on me because you've called me for the time such as this.
Yes.
And I just finished off a meeting. His last message was to my daughter Erin. She had received her half-year results, and he was so impressed, and he was spurring her on and said, don't worry, baby, you'll be fine. Last message to Erin, and there my cell phone rings, and it's the hospital, and they say, please come through now. We can't wait for later. Ron
What
is
time
not.
was that?
This was at 10:30 in the morning.
Oh.
Please come through now. Ron is not doing good. So from 5 o'clock to
Didn't
10:30,
he just drop you?
as I said,
5 o'clock, he's doing well. And then 5 hours later.
I don't know what happened. And so I got to the hospital, Pastor Lil. I got to Phoenix Tech School Robots. And I said, Lord, what is this? And I promise you, Pastor Lil, from there, I walked into that ICU. I had to put on the PPE, all those things. I got to Ron. He was sitting up on the bed.
He was sitting up.
He was sitting up on the bed, wide awake. He saw me. He gave me a very weak thumbs up. I said, my love, I'm here.
Oh.
What's going on? Aren't you coming home? Are you not doing well? So he looked at me and he just, gave me this blank stare. That first stare that I saw it this time, but like 100-fold worse. And he looked at me and he just put his head down and he was struggling to breathe. He was on an oxygen mask, struggling to breathe. And so I held him, Pastor Lil, and I started singing. I started singing. You deserve the glory. You deserve the honor. Lord, I lift my hands in worship. And I started singing that ward and that room filled with the presence of God.
At that moment in time, I don't think it was easy for God.
Nope.
I think he sat there and he said, I have to do this because I am sovereign. I'm supreme. I give and I take away. I do this. I'm boss. I can do this and I will do this. But what must have went through the mind of a loving father, an amazing, amazing comforter, amazing Jesus who died so that we can have life and life more abundantly and all of that. What could have gone through the mind of God when you are saying you deserve the glory? Because in advance, you're giving the worship and the
Amen.
thanksgiving because I'm taking my man home.
Yes.
That's what you know, right?
Yes.
And then?
And so I prayed over him Psalms 23.
Oh,
And I looked at him and I tried to hold his face in my hands. And I said to him, Ron, I love you. It's okay. I will be fine. The kids will be fine. God needs you more than I do. It's okay. You can go. And then I prayed a prayer of release, which I didn't know how to do. And I handed him over to his maker. And that was when I let go.
Connie, you are a strong and a brave woman. And what do I attribute that strength and bravery to? But your walk and your relationship with God.
Amen.
So, what are we saying today, beloved? You have to forge a relationship with the one that can be there in your most dire need, circumstance or situation. And like Ecclesiastes chapter 3 tells us, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. And we've just run out of time. So I'm going to leave it there. But I encourage you, talk to us, connect with us. The numbers are going to be on your screen. Connect with us and let us help you. We are going to be raw and we are going to be real, but we're going to hold your hand through this journey called grief. May God bless you.